Do you feel called to homeschool, but you need to keep your job and you're just not quite sure how you can balance both? If that's you, stick around and I'm going to tell you about 5 strategies for working while also homeschooling, and I'll detail exactly how my family makes it work. Welcome back. If we haven't chatted before, I'm Moggy and this is Half-Acre Harvest, where I homemake, homeschool, and homestead our half-acre microfarm. I've been homeschooling here in Washington State for about 8 years, but my homeschooling had to change pretty drastically when I went back to work about 5 years ago. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I do not think working outside the home while also trying to homeschool is ideal. And it's definitely not always easy, but it is entirely doable, especially if you're willing to keep an open mind about what homeschooling should look like. It's important to remember that the joy of homeschooling is that you get to tailor your homeschool to your unique family and your lifestyle. It doesn't have to look like someone you saw on YouTube. It doesn't have to look like the homeschoolers you know from church. And it definitely does not need to look like the public school, and that homeschoolers don't generally need to school from 8 to 3, 5 days a week to make good progress for the year. Which brings me to my first strategy for holding down a job while also homeschooling. Strategy 1, homeschool in the evenings and on weekends. Since you don't have to adhere to a bell schedule, manage transitions for 25 kids between subjects, you're going to get through a lot more work in a very short time. Now, it's important to also make sure that you're getting enough downtime as a family, so I wouldn't plan to do all of your schooling on the weekend. But you could definitely shift the subjects your student need the most help with to the days that you're home. And you can use my next tip to let your students continue to make good progress on the days when you're home. So strategy 2, set your school on autopilot for your work days. There's a few ways to go about this. I've had great luck with giving each kid a spiral notebook with a checklist that I expected them to work through each day. I always included daily chores, nature time, and a silly task. Sometimes getting them to motivate will take a little habit training, and I definitely would give them a chance to practice that habit while you're home, and then maybe call home a bunch or have a family member check in for the first few weeks. Which brings me to strategy 3. Tag team with your partner or with another family. I knew a family whose parents worked opposite shifts and would tag team the child care so that they could both work and also still keep their kids home. Another way to do this is to tag team with another family. Now, I do want to preface this by saying that you should never assume that a homeschool mom wants to homeschool for you or babysit your kids because she's home anyways. In fact, I wouldn't assume this about any mom. All moms are busy. It can sometimes work out for both families. For instance, maybe you're great at teaching language and she's great at teaching algebra. So you take her kids one afternoon a week, and maybe she takes your kids one afternoon a week. I've even had a friend who offered to teach a combination writing and history class one day a week. And I was able to send my daughter to her house one day a week, and then that took both those subjects off the table for me so that I could focus on other subjects. Now, strategy 4 is to do a fully online program. This is my least favorite option because I feel like my family already has too much screen time. But we do use an online program for some subjects. And most programs can be customized so that you can do 1 or 2 subjects or all the subjects. For most students, their school day is much shorter than you're used to with public school. When my youngest was using a fully online program, she could get all of her work done in just over an hour. These programs are often gamified, which means it feels like playing a game, but if that's your kid's learning style, they can really cover a lot of ground fast. In fact, with my youngest, I often had to catch her and say, "Stop, you're a week ahead." Sometimes I would just let it go too and let her get ahead. I mean, what is ahead or behind? It doesn't really matter in homeschool. You just make progress at your pace. So strategy 5 is to bring your kids to work with you or work from home when possible. Now, obviously, this isn't going to work for everyone. You can't bring your kids to work with you, for instance, if you work at a factory. But if you have an office job where maybe you have your own office, you could maybe bring your kids in occasionally. Talk to a supervisor about maybe flexing some hours so that you go in early and have a longer lunch break, or flexing some of your hours to work at home. This is all going to be very one-to-one, and you're just going to have to try different things and see what might work out for you. So I promised I would tell you exactly how we make this work. I want to back up and say this isn't what I would consider ideal. If I had to do it over, I'm not sure I would choose to go back to work. But that being said, the job really has been a blessing in that I'm able to serve my neighbors, which is important to me. We've also been able to meet some financial goals, and I do have the flexibility to bring my kids with me or flex my hours when I need to sometimes. Ideally, I'd love to still be doing that Charlotte Mason style homeschooling I did before, but not being home combined with my kids' ages and some of their specific learning difficulties just made that program too difficult to stick with. So what we're doing now, I currently have 2 homeschooled students, one going into 4th and one in 10th. We use an online program, Me Academy for the elementary school and Mia Prep for the high school. This program we use just for core subjects and a few electives. Lessons consist of an instructional video and some games and quizzes. Optional PDFs are available within the program for note-taking and extra practice. I'm able to check their progress remotely and call home to crack the whip if I need to. I also run home on my lunch break to make sure they're done or working on it. The great thing is that since learning this way doesn't take long, even if they have been slacking, I can get them working again and they'll be done in about as much time as it takes the average public schooler to do homework. Mondays are my day off, so typically that's our heaviest homeschool day. I save that day for any work that I know they're going to need extra help with. I've been relearning algebra on Mondays. I don't schedule any schoolwork for Fridays, so that's either a catch-up day or a day off / reward for getting it all done. I've also learned to shift my perspective to recognize and mentally check off any learning that happens outside of a formal setting. When my 9-year-old stacks random stuff on the wagon or the skateboard and tries to ride it down the driveway, she's gaining valuable background knowledge that's going to make it easier for her to learn formal STEM subjects later. I call it physical science and check it off. When my 15-year-old babysits, she's learning time management and interpersonal skills that are going to lend well to her being employed later. I call it occupational ed and check it off. So there's 2 things that I don't have to formally teach or think about right now. Honestly, just letting your kids explore their own talents and interests will take so much off your plate in terms of what you have to formally teach. So again, is this the ideal setup? No, and honestly, there is no ideal. We can find great fits for us and our families can thrive, but there is always going to be something we don't get around to or something we're striving to improve, and that's okay. That's life on planet Earth. So if you're still with me, I know this video is getting longer than I planned. I want to thank you. I hope I've been able to give you some valuable ideas, and most importantly, I hope I can be an encouragement. I truly believe you can do this. If this video has been helpful, I hope you'll consider subscribing or sharing with a friend. Thanks again for being here, and I hope to see you again soon.